Welcome to Homeschooling for Spirituality. The Flow is a delightful mix of insight, divine inspiration, and humor, where wisdom meets earthiness to help your ongoing spiritual growth and transformation. Follow the flow of enlightenment and explore everything spiritual through the deepest self-inquiry, as student Lisa Berry asks master spiritual teacher G.P. Walsh the kinds of questions you would ask an elder, a wise man, or a sage, and receive direct, simple, comprehensive, and deeply human lessons and teachings. From transcending the experience of separation, releasing old conditioned patterns and wounds, and alleviating suffering, to demystifying esoteric practices and revealing one's true purpose and innate freedom. Welcome to the flow of enlightenment. Transformation is all there is.
Ooh, and yet we step into the flow again. Hello, GP.
Hello, Lisa.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, GP, and all the listeners, and we try to come up with these really, hot topics. Hot but practical.
Hot and practical, yeah.
It sounds like I'm trying to sell a high-heeled shoe to somebody who really doesn't know how uncomfortable they will be.
Highly practical, oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, GP, I love that you asked. Just before we came on air here, everybody, we were talking and having a little chat and saying, maybe it'd be fun if you shared a little bit with people. What even. Well, meeting you has been how that's changed my life, literally. But what it's actually like, what's happening in my life because of the introduction, of course, to first self-inquiry and non-duality. And GP, I wanted to thank you so much for asking me that and to share it, because I do believe that stories really inspire or give that level of understanding.
Yes, of course they do, yeah. And when it's real, it's practical, right? This is, non-duality is not the most common. You'll hear about the chakras and you'll hear about multidimensional beings. You'll even hear more about UFOs than you will about the self-inquiry, which is ancient. I mean, thousands and thousands of years old. And yet almost unknown and even less understood.
Yes. And how true. I've never even heard of the words before, to be honest. Well, like self-inquiry is kind of that, yes, but non-duality. And in fact, my father always has taught me multiple times over and over, because every time I'd have a life lesson, he would always say the same little thing after. And I'm like, gosh, that thing just keeps showing up. And he'd always say, know thyself. Smart man. And that's really, in the
Smart
end, he
man.
goes, and that was all that was important. He said to know thyself. And so what happened was he'd wait for lessons to show up in my life, my own life lessons, and then he would kind of go, oh, there, see how that fits in there? There's that one again. And so.
Wow. What a great dad.
Yeah, he is. And so when I met you and you started speaking, let's just say it like that, because you kind of teach. You share stories, or you have these responses, but they are like lessons that show up. And I could have asked you the most basic, everyday, practical thing, and you have a thing with it, and that's coming from your own learning of non-duality. And no, not learning, because we don't learn. Experience. And so what I would love to share is that when I was trucking through life, just, I'm a happy-go-lucky camper, creating things, being an entrepreneur, my background has always been more of a nurturer in the health and wellness industry and a life coach. So I was drawn to more of those type things, like self-development, self-help, self-growth. And like I did have the parents that I did, but my books would teach. And then if I wasn't going that way, it was going to go to religion, which I wasn't quite comfortable with one quite yet. And then it was, oh, right, we can go into energy and vibration and frequency. That makes sense. And and then I met Noemi, and she does her channeling, and I thought, well, I can get on board a little bit with this here and stuff, and I'm learning, and the words are beautiful, and they make me feel good, and I like them, and the messages are really supporting and loving and compassionate. So I thought, that must be it. There you go. And then done. There we go. We'll do some angel card reading. We'll do this and that. Well, speak of love. And then, but I still I still needed something. I still had questions. I still had struggles, like everybody, and my growth. And then I met you, GP, and some of your responses and lessons kind of went, oh, wait a minute. And then I started taking notes. I have my own notebooks for GPs in my conversation. And I thought these have to be shared because they were what you were sharing with me about how to do self-inquiry and what non-duality is about. First of all, you talked something about an unusual thread. Well, it was like I finally saw this orange thread in the middle of a green tapestry. And I thought, well, why is that orange thread there? And maybe that was the thread that was actually making the entire green tapestry. And it just, every time you say something, it either gives me an answer or it helps me to find out why I feel the way I do and how can I move forward and take a next step, or maybe how I can take a step back and I don't even need to deal or worry about certain things. So it became quite the life lessons, and I find myself correcting my vocabulary all the time now, going, wait, I've got to literally reprogram even what I'm saying, what I'm thinking to what I'm saying, because I no longer think that way, feel that way. I now know who I am a little more. And well, I'll ask you this, GP, do you ever know who you are? Do you know who you are?
Well, yes and no, which is always the answer, isn't
Yes.
it? You know exactly who you are, without a shadow of a doubt. But it's a different kind of knowing. You don't know yourself as an object, as one thing knowing another. You don't know yourself as a body, as a gender, as a race, as an age. Right? Those are all appearances. That's not actually you.
Yep.
And so when most people think about knowing themselves, what they're really talking about is knowing what they want, knowing what they like, knowing how to say yes and no, knowing what they care about. But all of those, if you really look at them closely, are cultural. They're cultural appropriations. They're stuff you learned. They were stuff you were taught. Now, there's a few things that are innate. You know, every individual is drawn to certain things and not others. But if you look at it in the big picture of things, you know, multiple lifetimes, well, in your last lifetime, you had a different body, you had different hair, you had different race, different circumstances, you had different likes, you had different desires. So none of these things are actually consistent. They're all a knowing of oneself that it is actually quite superficial. And now, of course, I'm not an opponent of knowing those parts of you better. Matter of fact, I teach a lot of classes on how to come to know what is more natural to you, what is not the result of your conditioning, but what is coming natural to this particular form that you're in at this particular time. And that is true. I mean, the piano sounds different than a guitar. You're going to have different interests than I do. And that's a deeper level, for sure. It's closer to who you are, but it's not the final step. The true knowledge of yourself is beyond any kind of concept you can have. You're not a thought. So any thought of you would be little more than, the video of you, right? I mean, you don't watch a video on the Great Wall of China and think you visited the Great Wall of China. It's a representation of it, right? It's not actually you. And even if the image is perfect, like the image in a mirror, it's still an image. It's not you. How do you know you without anything extra added? And that's the track of non-duality, and that's why it's so different. And that's why it transcends things like angel reading and astrology and multidimensional beings and that sort of stuff, which is all well and good, right? I don't condemn anything on anybody's path that they discover, but it's all knowledge, and it's all knowledge that shifts and changes, right? And it gives you a different view of yourself, maybe a better view of yourself, maybe a more functional view of yourself, but it doesn't tell you who you are. How can it? It's coming from outside. The only way you can know yourself is directly. To know yourself directly as you, the experience of yourself. It's like how you know anything, right? If I want to know somebody, what do? I pay attention to them.
Yes.
I listen to them. I hang out with them, right? I get to know them, right? When you want to know yourself, the attention has to go to you and to nothing else. That sounds so selfish. It sounds so crazy. But you have to remove everything that isn't you. And you'll find that that's almost everything.
It is, yes. I love how you said that along your path. That was really cool, because here we are in the flow of enlightenment. And along that path, that flow, where it's going, they're the most perfect things along the way that you need to get there, to start removing one other thing, or use to ask those questions. And I kind of just imagined this path, with angel cards over here, and sacred geometry over here, and over along the path. I'm just picking these up. But a more functioning view of yourself, and that's a perfect way of starting. And a lot of times people can get so wrapped up, and there is an actual topic today's show beyond this, which is perfect, because this is what we always. And I picked a big one, and I think that's why we needed this seat. I think we needed this foundation, because in the end we could pick every topic in the world, but if we are not, paying attention to the one thing, like you said, that has nothing else but you, that attention has to be on you. So we choose these topics and figure out, how does non-duality help us in this area and that area, even though it's all the same area.
Yeah. How does knowing myself, what effect does that have on my life? And it's a big question. But if you realize that your entire life has been determined by how you perceive yourself, then it's the only question worth asking.
Yes.
Nothing else matters, because the lens through which you see the world, which means the lens through which you experience the world. What you call reality is simply your experience of the vastness of reality, narrowed down to a small focus of perception, and that perception is determined by your self-image. If you don't know who you are, the world will appear in a certain way to you. I can't remember who said it, but somebody says the world is not what you think it is. The world is what you think you are.
Yes, that's so true. That is so true. And when you talked about the lens that we see it, and we, sometimes we think, okay, well, if I see myself better, will I be better? Well, you'll be better if you are better. If you if you love yourself. And so one of the topic that I wanted to ask today was, can being enlightened help me pay my bills? And that question, GP, is really because a lot of people think if I could just do better, be better, become more enlightened, I'll understand the mysteries of the world and be able to know the lottery winning numbers and all these, and attract all the money. So that was really a big can of worms. There's a lot more questions to go along with that. But when I first asked that, have you been asked that question before? Is that what people are thinking? Like, can being enlightened help me pay my bills? How do you try to jump steps?
Pretty much everyone asks it, whether it be conscious or unconscious. 'Cause let's face it, the only reason we enter into the spiritual path, or personal development, or religion, no matter what it is to escape suffering. We're suffering.
Yes.
We're discontent. We're feeling lacking. We're afraid. We're afraid of death. We're afraid of going without, right? And we're looking for some kind of remedy for it. Now, some people seek that remedy in becoming, millionaires, becoming Wall Street brokers and the like, because culturally, having money is supposed to be the key to happiness and safety and freedom and the like, right? That's a cultural value. That's how having money is perceived, especially in the West. And of course, there's no country more steeped in materialism than the United States. Everything is about money. Money is the value system of everything. But if you look, what are you really after? You're after the end of suffering, right?
Yes.
And to seek the end of the suffering is the most loving thing you could possibly do for yourself. The problem isn't the fact that we want to be free of suffering. God, of course, duh.
Yeah.
The problem is where we're looking to do that. And do they work, right? And
Yeah.
but we become so enculturated into this idea that that I'll be happy if I pay my bills, and then from that we extrapolate. Well, that if I have enough money that I'll always be able to pay my bills, then I'll always be happy.
Yes. Yes.
Now, interestingly enough, every now and then, I don't know how often it is, but last, I think it was about 8 years ago that I read, the UN does a survey of the world to find the happiest countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's not the U.S. We're like down there with, Eastern Europe and the like 57.
Mm.
And the countries that you would expect to be, to be miserable are the poorest. Right?
Yeah. The finance.
Now, what
yes.
is that about? What is that about? Well, clearly, money does not make one happy. And and there's been like statistics, studies done on people with a lot of money, right? And it has absolutely no effect on happiness. As a matter of fact, it has a deleterious effect on happiness. The more money people have, the more worried they are about keeping it.
Absolutely. Yes. Now we're suffering because we might lose it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
But it gets back to the question. I'm looking for something external to me. I'm not looking to me. Who am I? It doesn't answer that question. It doesn't even ask the question.
Yeah.
Right? Non-duality would take this approach and say, I want to have a lot of money because then I can be secure. Okay, good. Wanting security? I understand that. Money? I know exactly what that is. We can talk about it all day. It's very clear, right? The wanting, the desiring, also very clear, right? So the direct object and the verb are very, very clear, right? And we can talk about that all day, but nobody ever asks, okay, but who is the I? Who are you? Nobody asks that. We talk about what we want. We talk about the wanting. We talk about the dreams for our life. Do you know what you are wanting? You hear Abraham Hicks say every single time, right? Nobody says, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? Nobody looks at the I. That's the thread of non-duality. And if we do that, everything else shifts because my perception is everything. There's absolutely no reason to be unhappy because you don't have money.
And on that one, I like that one because that's what our goal is today during this show, is to shift our perception so that we are not just always chasing after and relying on external things like money to make us happy. So come on back. We're going to have more chats on the Flow of Enlightenment with GP Walsh and myself, Lisa Berry, all about money today.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes. Co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
I'm Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
All right, welcome back. We are jumping back into the flow of enlightenment, or maybe you just want to put your foot in it and go, oh. I am so lucky to be here. I'm happy to be here with GP Walsh as my new master spiritual teacher. I never, ever thought I'd ever have somebody in my life that would have that kind of title or acknowledge like that thing, but I feel kind of it's exciting to know. I like the word teacher kind of even over coach. I mean, there's a role for both, but in this instance, GP, you're sharing these lessons that we are able to use in practical senses, especially around what we're talking about today, which is money. And I don't always have like prepared questions, but today I was like, ooh, there's some questions here that I really, really want to ask about it. And the first one was a big one. Can being enlightened help pay my bills? I'm going to jump into one specific thing with sharing this with you first. I was talking about my dad earlier, and so when I was young, and I think I worked for a family business, and he was paying me, and he said, but always remember, money is not what makes us happy. And I said, well, I know, Dad, I'm happy. And he goes, and I said after a while, I said, Dad, you got to stop telling me that, because I'm going to believe that money, we don't even need it because I'm so happy. And so I'm not going to want to work. And so I want to ask you, I'm like, I don't need money. I'm happy. I want to ask you flat out, is money a concept? Is money, how does that involve? Like if money doesn't make you happy, but money certainly does bring people the satisfaction of things, like what is money now to us?
Whatever you think it is. It's really very simple. If you look at what is it, it's a piece of paper or a number on a screen, right? Mm-hmm. So if a piece of paper laying there would have no effect on you whatsoever, right? So the meaning is all coming from you. It's completely a projection. Mm. If I walked down the street and I saw a 100-euro bill laying on the street, and I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, it would have absolutely no meaning whatsoever.
Right.
But if it was a $100 bill U.S., I go, oh, look at that. And I pick it up because it has value. Well, where's the value of anything come from? You. You give it value. You make it important. You make it a god or you make it a servant. And it's completely up to you. You can either serve it or you can let it serve you. Money is just the way things function for now. It won't always be that way, by the way. We're coming to the end of that particular cycle. It'll be a completely different way of being together in the not-too-distant future. But in the meantime, it's just functional, right? It is what it is. It buys this, it buys that, it gives me basic things that I need. But there's no happiness in it. There's no value. There's no life. It possesses nothing. Buddha would say it has no self. There's nobody there. Right? It is just an object upon which we project value. So I think in order to be happy, I need money. So money now becomes my happiness. Literally.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I pursue it the way I would pursue happiness. Right? And of course, everybody's pursuing happiness. Right? You can't help that. We have to do that. That's what leads us to the spiritual path, is the genuine pursuit of happiness. The spiritual path directs us inward to find it. The material path directs us outward. And the further away we get from the inner state of happiness, the more unhappy we get, which is where addictions come from. We grab on more and more and more and more and more. And that's the addiction of extreme wealth. They just want more and more and more. It's completely unsatisfying. So what does it mean? Whatever you say it means. You're the owner of it. All meaning, nothing has meaning other than you. You give everything meaning. You're the projector, so you project on the world the meaning you want it to have. What is that? And what does that truly mean? It means that you are the one that has those qualities. The projector cannot project anything it doesn't possess.
Ooh. Oh, hold on. The projector cannot project anything that it does not already possess.
Correct.
Did I say that one right? So we must already be possessing something if we project it.
If I project happiness on money, it means I already have it.
Ah, okay. Yes, okay. But is that okay, now I'm going to get all fancy here.
Okay.
Is the ego what projects it, or are we, us, like the we that we're getting to know?
The ego is a projection.
Oh, right. Okay.
The ego is a projection of those qualities onto an object. The moment you project it onto an object, that object appears to have a life. It appears to have a self. It appears to have existence. That's the ego.
So
When we
is it
project
the
onto
ego?
our body minds. Go ahead.
Is it the ego that has the relationship with money then, or the soul that has the relationship with money through the ego?
Well, the ego is simply how... the ego is simply the false sense of self, right?
Okay.
When I say I want something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I ask the question, okay, I know what wanting is, and I know what the thing is that you want, but who are you, right? Now, if that sense of I gets examined, you'll find that the wanting is there, that the object of the wanting is there, but the I isn't. Mm-hmm. The I is a thought. The I is the projection. We're getting very deep here, hopefully. So
Yes. Yeah.
we're getting to the essence of the whole thing. The ego is believing that thought, I want something, is real, is a real being. And it's just a thought. The real you, the one that perceives the I, the wanting, and the object, has no desire. It's the infinite being. That's God. That's the I am. And it is free of all desire. It is infinite abundance itself.
And
what
I remember
could it
when
possibly want?
Yes, and I remember one of the teachings is that the truth is always true. It never has a beginning or an end. It is always there. And so I know that myself, I will want something sometimes, and then I don't want it. So it cannot be true, and therefore it could not be I that wanted it. Yes. Okay. That was tough. Okay.
Well done. Yes, you're absolutely right. If it's transient, it's not the truth.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So I want
transient
something
is
one
not
day
the
and I
truth.
don't want it the next. Well, then that desire wasn't the truth. It was just a temporary modulation. It was just, something that came up. Right? Now, if I realize that that's true of every single desire, I will have no attachment to the desire. If I get it, great. If I don't get it, great. I am no longer the slave to whether or not a desire gets fulfilled or not. And that desire, and when I am a slave to it, then my happiness is attached to the desire. And when my happiness is attached to the desire, now money becomes valuable because money is the means for me to get all my desires. So you can see how it works, right?
Yes. Yeah. You use the word slave a couple times now, and are we serving it or is it serving you? So in that very first question, can being enlightened help pay your bills? I mean, it can, and it doesn't have to. It's irrelevant.
You're beautiful, yes. If I am happy,
yes,
right, then what am I seeking? And then if I can pay my bills, if I can't pay my bills, I'm still happy. And since happiness is what I have been seeking the entire time, what more do I want?
So if we're suffering because we cannot pay our bills, is that correct? We would be. So if you can't pay your bills, and
No,
okay,
it's not correct. No, paying your bills or not paying your bills is simply a condition. The suffering is because of my attachment to paying them or not paying them. The suffering comes from my relationship to it, right?
Right.
That's where the suffering comes from. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Right.
Now, but if my happiness is dependent upon that, then I'm going to feel unhappy when I can't and happy when I can.
Right.
And again, I've projected the happiness on it. But now, on a very practical level, if I am happy consistently, what's the most likely experience I'm going to have?
I would think you'd attract abundance, but what?
Well, yeah. Of course, because instead of seeking happiness, you'd be expressing it.
Yes.
And happiness, being infinite in its nature, is the absolute essence of abundance.
Ooh,
what does abundance
happiness is
mean
the
if it's not
essence of
happiness?
abundance.
Yes.
Oh. Okay,
If I have the
yes.
happiness, then I have the abundance. Right? Because I have what I'm seeking.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
everything that I'm seeking. And happiness, when it is discovered within, has no limits on it. It is absolutely infinite, has no beginning and no end. It is the truth. What could be more abundant than that?
Yes. So this is actually, this is getting fun. Because we just have given so much to money. I think, is it like the number, well, power, I guess, but the number one thing people are, seeking, and which is causing this suffering. I'm imagining whenever now, when I hear the word suffering and we're trying to get away from it, I'm imagining little kids sulking, they're sulking in the corner. I don't have that. I want that. And then I'll be happy. But it does go deeper, because that can become, that is a condition, whatever it is. I don't have that. That's the condition. And then we start creating these beliefs around that, so that whenever I don't have that, I'm not happy. And then is that what we have to kind of work at,
Well, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I decided that if I don't have that, I won't be happy. I don't have it, and therefore I'm not happy. It's completely a construction of your mind.
Right, yes. Yeah.
It's
we
so
have decided,
simple
yeah.
when you look at it. I decided. I made the rule.
Right.
I made it.
Yes. I made the rule. That's so perfect. Exactly. When you're little, again, you ask your mom something. Well, why is that? Because I said so. Well, yes, because it wouldn't be so otherwise. You go. Well, I want to talk about the word, because with money, we're thinking of this, about compensation. And throwing that one out there. Why do we feel we can, buy life or replace to compensate, to replace our value, compensate our knowing ourselves, the love for ourselves, the happiness inside for this external belief of money? Where did we give up? Where did we trade that in?
Oh boy, that goes all the way back to the beginning, right? It goes all the way back to the beginning when the sense of a separate self emerged.
Oh.
And the sense of a separate self emerges very early on. And when that sense of a separate self happens, the first thing we do is identify with the body. Then there becomes a me and an other. The I, the egoic mind, is born. And at that point, because I am now limited to this body, the destiny of the body, the characteristics, the limitations of the body become my limitations. And now I spend my entire life trying to compensate for that feeling of lack. When the sense of a separate self emerges, two things emerge immediately: the fear of lack and the fear of death. This is what's actually symbolized in the story, the mythological story of Adam and Eve. That's the eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what it's referring to. When that first taste, very early in life, where we taste that fruit of duality. The newborn child is undifferentiated consciousness. There's no difference between mom and me. There's no me. Mm-hmm. There's just pure experience. But little by little, the nervous system, as it's reacting to the environment, is creating a version of you that responds to that environment. It's purely evolutionary. It's purely adaptive, and it works very well. If it didn't, we'd all be dead. So, good news. But then we mistake the container we've been put in for the formless water that we actually are. And so now the characteristics of my conditioning, the body, my culture, the way my parents taught me, the morals and all of that, they become me. And I confine myself to that. That is the birth of the false sense of self. And inevitably that arises out of it is a sense of lack. And then to the degree that it's, in your culture, you will seek the remedy for lack externally. And of course, because we inherently know that this isn't really true, that something is missing, right? We set on this path of compensation, trying to compensate for what we know is missing. But everywhere we look externally, it may satisfy for a moment, and then it turns sour again and again and again and again. And eventually, if you're fortunate enough, you hear the Dharma, the teachings of the truth, and your attention begins to turn inward, the real source of it, to the place where that original schism took place. And that's where you heal it. And you find that that sense of self that created the sense of being separate was never true. That you are not the container, you're the water.
I do recall you sharing that, and that one, we're going to touch on that when we get back. But I love that you said there's those two things that cause the suffering. It's fear, that we fear is lack and death, and that there's something missing, or that we're don't want to die, and that causes this suffering, and that sets us on the path of compensation. When we don't have to walk that path, we can turn it inward and ask these questions, do the self-inquiry, and I'm going to ask this when we get back, but really be okay with not okay with it, but completely understand and transcend the death and lack. But This is the most interesting conversation. We're going to sneak away to commercial, but when we come back, we are going to just feel the abundance and step back into the flow of happiness and enlightenment.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Enlightenment. Oh my gosh, not to the Enlightenment, to the flow of enlightenment. Why not? We'll welcome them to Enlightenment. That's here.
Welcome.
Oh, well, GP Walsh, my new friend, my new teacher, my new everything here is just always, oh my gosh, it's like a fun. I know that they say non-duality is not something that we learn with our academic brain that we experience, but I do love that you are trying to help and teach us to somehow get some sense of it, that we can use our brains to reprogram. I'm jumping right in there right now. How does that happen when they say, yes, non-duality is not a thing that you learn, but yet I do feel like I am learning a little bit.
Well, yeah, it is. The beauty of non-duality is it's not extreme.
Right.
It's not like it's this and not that. It can't be that. Right? If something is really true, if an explanation of things, in order to be true, it can't be a closed system. It has to explain everything, right? Yes. Not just some things, but everything, right? It's got to be comprehensive. Atmananda referred to it as higher reasoning. This kind of using the mind to question the mind's own assumptions is the highest use of the left. And it's essential. It's essential to the non-dual. I demand the most intellectual precision from my students. Because you have to become sensitive to the subtleties. You have to become sensitive to the intellectual tricks and prejudices that bring us into whole lines of thinking that simply aren't true. What non-duality does is say, let's go right to the depth of it. Where does all of that originate? Okay, I've got this view of the world. All right. Well, what's the underlying conceptual framework that makes you think that this is the way things are? Now, if you're willing to go to that depth and really challenge it, you're actually in rarefied company, because most people really prefer their story. They don't want to challenge it, right?
Yes.
They want to justify it. This is what wars are.
Yes.
This is what the political system is in most of the world. I mean, it's becoming absolutely horrid here in the United States. It's just people arguing their side. Nobody's questioning the underlying assumptions, the underlying value systems. Why do you draw that conclusion? That's what true intellect was made to do. That's what true education is made to do. Right? And so non-duality draws on that. But then it takes it a step further and says, now, you need to be examining yourself. That's the ultimate thing to look at. What's this concept of yourself? And how do you dig down to the point where you find you? Not a concept of you, not a thought of you, not an experience of you, but you. With the actual, real you.
Because you brought up the country, and war and politics and things like that. I'm sorry, I have the funniest picture in my head right now. If we're all asking ourselves, going within and self-inquiry, are we ever able to come together as a group, like the people, and self-inquire the group, like the essence of the, like a company might have a mission statement or their purpose statement. Can it ever become a collective, or should it always just stay as self?
It has to be self. From the self grows the collective, right?
Okay.
I mean, a company, whether it be large or small, everybody's got their self-interest in it, and there's a relationship there, and then they're all serving this kind of this purpose together. And of course, let's not forget, the point of companies is to make money. It is a money-generating thing. It's not to help humanity. It's not to do good things. There are conscious businesses that are emerging, right? But they're still stuck in this system where you have to make money.
Right.
And the value system of corporations, any corporation that is traded on any exchange, be it the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or any of that, their only purpose is to make money. Period.
Okay. Oh.
Right. So you right. So they're not engaged in any of this. Right. Now that represents the value system of the group of people who are in control. To the uber wealthy, making money is the only thing that matters, and therefore that is a value that is held by individuals that is then reflected in the institutions and the structures that they create. People talk about the Illuminati and this secret group of people who are controlling things. They're not secret. You can find out what their names are. They're the owners of the Federal Reserve banks around the world.
Right.
And they don't meet in dark places wearing funny costumes. They don't have to, because they all share the same value system. They all think alike.
Right.
So they don't have to get together and conspire, because they have basic assumptions about the way things are. They conform to that. They all agree about it, and therefore all the institutions and structures that get created from that value system will reflect it.
They prefer their story.
That's their story, and they just happen to be powerful enough that they're imposing their story on everybody else. Right. So the only way that could be changed is from the bottom up, only through the seeing through of the flaw, questioning that value system.
And so that means I must know my story then. If I never stop to question what my story is to prefer it, then I just will go and live somebody else's story.
That's all we ever do. That's what unconsciousness is. That's what conditioning is. I'm living the story of my tribe in whatever form it's been given. If I was born into an extremely wealthy family, I would have a certain set of values, and this is the way I would be. I'm still a robot. I'm still not conscious, right? The world may praise me because I've got all sorts of money, but I'm still just as lost as anybody else. If I'm born in another culture that doesn't have that kind of value, I'm going to be very, very different, right? Now, none of these are awareness, because none of these have been questioned yet. You have to you have to question it to find out who you are. Otherwise, you will be acting out the story, and everybody's acting out the story. There's nobody, there's no devil sitting over there pulling strings, right? Laughing to himself, right? This is just something that happened to evolve. So this cultural view. So there's no center of it. There's no place where we can go wipe out the center of it, and then the world's going to be happy ever after. The only center of it is the ego that lives in every single one of us. That's what the devil actually represents in the Bible and other mythological writings. It represents the ego, that which opposes itself to the true self, which is God. So the devil represents the ego, and the true self is represented by God. And that's the war in heaven. That's the book of Revelation. That stuff's very fun to look when you look at it from that perspective. You see that the entire war, Armageddon, all of it, is in you.
Yes.
It is a struggle between the truth of you and the false ideas about yourself that you have accepted as true about you.
That's a tough one for the ego to even say, to hear or to start asking that question, because you're like, oh gosh, wow, if the Armageddon's in me, then I'm the one who has to start asking the question, who am I? And then that means a lot. Well, is it a lot of work? Would you say it's a journey, it's a practice?
Well, first off, the ego can't ask that question and won't. If you're asking that question, the true you is beginning to emerge already. Consciousness is already dawning.
Oh, that's huge. The ego cannot ask that question. Oh my gosh, that's
would
mind-blowing. Right, why wouldn't it? Do you see that bad thing I'm doing? Say, taunting other people to look? You're like, no, they wouldn't want that to look. Oh.
The ego can't smell its own breath.
Right. That's funny. Okay. Wow. Oh, that's so true in so many different ways when you take a look at life, and people who you would think we might make a comment, wow, you have such a big ego, or they're so egotistical they wouldn't know. It's right. They don't know because they don't
know.
No.
Right. And and arrogance is not egotism. Somebody who thinks they're a victim and terrible, that's also a form of the ego. The ego does not care whether it's good or bad. It only wants to be separate.
Right.
It only wants to define itself. It can define itself above or below. It doesn't care as long as I'm defined. Now, let's get to your other question, because it's really an important one. Is it hard? Well, is suffering interminably hard? This is easier.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
This is way easier than that. Right? Is perpetual suffering hard? You bet your ass.
Yes. Oh, that was the best answer ever.
So, it's only hard in that we have not really been educated to question our assumptions with this kind of precision. Right? Okay. The only assumptions we question. I mean, it's gotten better, since the self-help movement and the consciousness movement and the like. We're willing to question our beliefs so that we can come up with better beliefs, create a better ego, and therefore have more stuff and have a better quality life. All is good, but it's a big step to start questioning the structure of your identity itself.
So I love that. And I'm actually going to use that as a segue to say thank you to one of our sponsors. Yes, it's actually perfect, because as you mentioned, it's as we are learning experiences and question. Sometimes it does take a journey when we, that's an opportunity for us. We're out going for a walk in nature, or we're just seeing something new, and we're feeling how we feel different. Maybe we're happy, or maybe we're not. But our lovely, wonderful Suzanne has this business that she has just launched, and it's high rise tourism. And I love that we were talking about we're rising high to higher consciousness, the higher you said something higher, something reasoning. Higher reasoning. And I thought
yes.
I thought of her, and I was like, oh, high-rise tourism. And a little different thing that I'm going to read from her that we're just switching it up here is that she wants to share that the services that she offers is to help business owners in their hospitality, restaurant, and tourism industry to create an epic experience for their guests, the high-rise experience. And she does this through promotions and advocacy using stories, because she's a beautiful author. Her background is as a published author, and she helps with writing blogs, posts, contents, writing on Facebook, all kind of social media stuff, website and training. She helps bring the business stories alive. I love that, which draws in guests who want to experience their restaurant, B&Bs and attractions, etc. And I'm just so grateful that she and I and, GP, we've all partnered, because it is about changing, having a different experience and being able to enjoy it, have something bring, or I don't want to say the right, not ignite, but reveal the happiness when you are in a different thing, because it's a different, does it wake, when we have different experiences, does it wake something up in us, GP, or does it reveal something to us?
Well, yes, of course it does, and it can. My experience, and I say this with the I say that.
Oh, GP. Oh. Okay. Well, we're always going to be wondering what he's saying. There you go. GP, I don't know if you've muted yourself, perhaps, on your phone there. Sometimes I press my cheek. We'll see if we get him back there. Because I am curious. You know what? I think that's... Oh.
Okay, sorry about that.
There we go. Hi.
all of a sudden, the internet just kind of died for a second.
Oh, no, we're supposed we need to know what he always says.
Everything was dead. Well, yes, that's right. I was about to say something. I was about to reveal the secret of life, and too late. A hushed tone comes over the crowd. The only path that ultimately leads to a happiness that does not fade, that is eternal, is this one. And it's hard for me to say that, because, all paths lead. Yes, eventually, right? If I am happy, life becomes a celebration. Every taste, every morsel, every place I go, every place I visit, every experience I have. And those experiences become rich and precious and beautiful. If I'm not happy, I'm going to be seeking happiness in them, and therefore I'm not really going to experience them as they are. If consider when you're in a relationship with somebody, right, and you're trying to get something from them, right? It's a different quality of relationship than when you're giving to them and just simply appreciating them, right? And this is the whole nature of relationship with everything. So non-duality is a very, very inward path. It's a place you ultimately go to all by yourself. But then you turn around and you experience life from the point of view of somebody who's already complete. Now all of a sudden you see things not for what you can get from them, but you see them as they are. The utter beauty of them, the utter extraordinary uniqueness of them. Every moment becomes a celebration.
I don't know if I can squeeze this in, because it's an important one. You just mentioned about how we feel that difference when we're giving. Because everybody's giving, right? So you're in a relationship and they start giving, and what if you don't like what they're giving? Or maybe, like you said, there's the president, it's a this, it's a that. What if we don't like what they're giving? Does that just means that we should be around other people?
Well, it could be. Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantee that any two people are going to be compatible, and if what they have to give is what you want, is what you like to receive, well, it's beautiful, it's perfect. If not, well, then you just as part as friends. I mean, there's no crime in that, and of course things change over time as well, right? So nobody's going to be the same way tomorrow than they are today. So it becomes a matter of growing together in terms of the relationship. But that can only happen when I'm happy.
Yes.
When I'm happy, I'm present, right? And then I'm clear, right? If something's not working, then it's not working. It's crystal clear, because I don't have to get something from it. But the fact of the matter is, when you're actually happy, your level of appreciation is so high that relationships become far more stable.
And that's actually where I'll bring that back, is we began this whole thing with, can being enlightened help me pay my bills? But, I love that you said stable and you said clear, like your debt is clear, you're clear, we're good. I love how that kind of value rounded it all up, but that is it. And GP, thank you so much for, we didn't do an open line question this week, but we will be doing it next week. So if ahead of time you want to ask any questions, please email them at questions@gpwalsh.com or call in, and we will be announcing the number throughout the show next week. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, GP.
Thank you, Lisa.